Now let's move on to the third question. How do you view and assess the increasing trend of digital ethnography and use of visual culture in sociological research? Now this is something that most of you might not have read or might not have heard about. See, basically this is the trend of digital ethnography means collecting data from the digital space. Okay, from the social media and all the digital space. Visual culture means use of, now people, the nature of interaction among the people has changed, in the sense that now people also interact through images, videos, memes, right? That is also a mode of interaction, right? So understanding these visual culture means understanding or studying these images, memes, videos and all the visual representation in social media to collect data and understand the behavior of social groups. That is digital ethnography and visual culture. Is it clear? Now, when it comes to research methodology chapter, we usually learn about the offline, and whatever is online, it will be survey or phone call interviews, right? We haven't dealt with that of collecting data from social media as well as the digital space when we learn the research methodology chapter. Now, digital ethnography and visual culture is nothing but collecting data from the social media, from the digital space, and visual culture means also learning or understanding and analyzing various images, representations, memes, videos, etc. used in the digital space, which is actually used as a mode of interaction. So by understanding and learning these, we will be able to learn and understand the meanings attached by different social groups. See, for example, as this is something that you might not have come across in your preparation. Say, for example, if you want to learn about LGBTQ community, okay, digital ethnography and visual culture is a good source to learn, because it is difficult to find people who belong to LGBTQ community, and the accessibility to, talk to them, to interview them is limited, right? And when it comes to that of online space, there is different forums for LGBTQ community. That forums can be used by the researchers to collect data related to their behavior, the interactions that take place between them. They can also make use of the visual culture, especially the posts in social media depicting LGBTQ community. Through that, they can also understand the meaning that society attaches to it, the meaning that the LGBTQ community attaches to themselves. Likewise, they can understand and learn about different communities. Is it clear? This is digital ethnography and visual culture. Clear? All right. So here, and I don't think anyone might have selected this particular choice in the paper 1 questions, because this is something that I think 99.9% of the people might not have heard about. But the remaining 2 questions are actually quite easy in this part. Okay, so we'll discuss that. So here you can just define or explain what is digital ethnography and visual culture. I don't think you will get a proper definition of a thinker for that, but you can just explain. So this is also one thing that you must be aware of. If suppose you don't have a proper definition of a thinker, not just because you haven't learned it, but there is, as such, there is no such proper definition by a thinker for that kind of topic. What you can do is you can explain that particular term in your own words. Okay, that is possible only when a proper definition is not available. So if there is no proper definition available, that doesn't mean you should not try to explain it or define it. You have to do it, because that is the standard. Okay, clear? Now, next is when it comes to body, you can first start mentioning about the various methods of digital ethnography, like digital data, visual ethnography, ethnography, content analysis. This is essentially the same thing that I've mentioned, but in different terms. We'll be providing you the key. You can just go through the different methods of digital ethnography. Okay, ethnography means like you are collecting data from social media, different accounts, different posts, different forums, likewise. Then you have to write the merits of digital ethnography. What will be the merits? You can actually think about it by yourself. One is, it is easy to study, accessibility is high, it is not that time consuming, the resources constraints are limited. These are one set of merits of digital ethnography as well as visual culture. The second important aspect is it allows you to study various social groups. Because when we are taking that particular data or research into the general, the offline mode, you have to select a particular community, and sometimes studying that community will also be very difficult because of the access issue. But in digital ethnography, it is not a problem. You can study multiple social groups. You can also study a subgroup within a social group. That is also very much possible when you choose digital ethnography, because there are different forums that are specifically there for different subgroups. So the studying becomes more easy, more inclusive, etc. And richer data. You get real-time data. You can monitor it, day in, day out. You can collect real-time data. You can analyze the changes in the level of interactions. That can be done, right? Continuously you can do it. But when it comes to offline methods of collecting data, it is not possible. But in online, you can continuously evaluate and understand the changes happening in the interaction as well. Clear? What are the demerits? One is reliability of data. We never know whether it is true or not, right? There is conformity bias. We'll try to confirm, right, based on our social group. Then echo chambers in social media, right? That will actually influence people's thoughts and stuff. So that is also a problem. And you can also mention about the privacy concerns, because we are kind of doing a kind of, you are monitoring a person's, profile, kind of eavesdropping, like what is the correct term used for that? Eavesdropping itself, right? Yeah. So you are kind of doing a digital eavesdropping. You are continuously, privacy concerns can be there. And finally, digital divide. You will not be able to study those communities which do not have access to digital technologies. So that is also a problem. Clear? Now, conclusion here, you cannot write down any alternative idea. Instead, you can write that in 21st century, digital ethnography is also one of the most important source to collect data, to conduct social research. Because, see, people are now living their life more in online space rather than in the offline space, right? Communications are more of becoming in the online space rather than in offline space. So it is very important for 21st century research to do or include digital ethnography. Then, describe the main idea of Max Weber's book, The Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism, as a critique of Marxism. Okay, what will you do here? You can start by writing. Okay, tell me. I'm going to start here. How will you start this? What is Weber's book, The Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism? So you have to start by writing his study, Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism. Second paragraph, you can mention about Marxism. Okay. And then you can explain Weber's theory of Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism. And one important thing, whenever you are writing a theory, you have to ensure that the theory is written in a well systematic, structured way. I am saying this because I have seen the way students write theory. It's not a problem for students to write generic and dynamic questions in sociology, because there is no need of structure, there is no need of any of those stuff. But when it comes to theory, there is a proper structure, there is a proper kind of, you have to have a chronology. Chronology is not the right term, but there should be a proper order, right? First, you have to write this idea. Second, then you have to explain this. Third, you have to do this. Fourth, you have to write this. That order is important. And mostly what I've seen in students is they will write what needs to be written in the fourth point will be their first point. Okay, and the first point will most probably be the last point. And when I read that, I really feel like it's too complicated. The way students write theory is becoming more complicated in nature. And I don't know the reason why it is happening, but that is there. So you must learn the theory by considering or keeping in mind that you have to write it as an answer. Now you might have learned Marxian, more, a concept of economic determinism. You have learned Merton's theory of, postulates of functional analysis and stuff. You might have learned about his theory of deviance, right? Everything, you might have prepared all of those stuff. But you have to have that idea that you need to write it as maximum of like 125 to 150 words. That will be the maximum word limit that you will get to explain a theory, or lower than that. I'll say that it will range from around 75 words to maximum of 150 words. That is how much words that you will get to explain all the theories. Because if it is asked for 10 marks, you have to write introduction, you have to write conclusion, right? That will fetch around like 50-60 words. Remaining 90 words, if suppose you have to write an alternative idea, then further it will come down. So anyway, for 10 marker, if you just have to write the theory with introduction and conclusion, there itself you have to write that theory only in 90 words. But you might have learned that theory in 1000 words or 500 words or 750 words. How will you bring it down to 90 words without losing the meaning, without losing the flow and structure? So that is a big task in front of you, right? Now suppose you take it for 20 marks. Word limit is around like 250 to 300 words, like maximum. Now there, for every 20 marker question, there will be 2 parts. So that makes it 125, 125 or maximum 150. Again, there if you are explaining that theory, maximum word limit that you will get will be around 125 words, not more than that. So something that you learn in 1000 words or 700 words or 600 words should be written in 125 words, right? And that is where most of the students make that mistake, where once they start writing, they will be kind of aware that, okay, how will I try to make it concise? How will I reduce the size? How will I clearly express that particular idea? And all of these confusion will result in an answer which is not at all clear, which is not comprehensible, right? So please be sure to learn the theory by keeping in mind that you have to write it in 100 to 125 words. So as soon as you learn all the theories, try to write it in 100, 125 words and check whether you have missed any point in between, whether there is proper clarity and flow in the answers. For that, you can also use your peer group, right? You can exchange those answers, you can read, you can give your suggestions, and your friends can give you suggestions regarding the theory. Likewise, you need to prepare. Okay, clear? So why I mentioned that? Because here you are supposed to write Weber's theory on Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism. Hardly you will get 100 words to write this theory here. Because in the second part, you are supposed to write about how Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism is a critique of Marxism. How is it critique of Marxism? Because when it comes to emergence of capitalism, Marxian view and Weber's view is different, right? So you can write that particular explanation. When it comes to economic determinism, because when it comes to Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, Weber is saying that something which is in the superstructure can influence the base structure, right? Marxian theory of economic determinism say that base structure influences the superstructure. Religion is part of superstructure. In Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, Weber is saying that religion has led to changes in the economic system. So that is a criticism of economic determinism. You can also mention about the role of religion, how religion can act as a source of social change. Likewise, you have to mention how Weber's idea of Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism is a critique of Marxism as a whole. Clear? You have to write it in points, or paragraph is also fine, but these ideas should be there. And finally, when you are concluding, you can mention that Weber have taken a multi-dimensional view, right? You can mention the difference that Marxism is a unidimensional view and Weber's model is a multi-dimensional view, where even in Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, Weber has addressed that Protestantism is only one factor that has helped in emergence of capitalism. There are even other factors which have also helped in emergence of capitalism. Clear? All set? Next question, critically explain the salient features of alienation as propounded by Marx. Simple question, critically explain. That is the key word here. So if you are asked to critically explain, what you need to do is, you have to write the criticism of alienation and it needs to be given equal weightage or slightly more weightage. Okay. And instead, what students will do here is, they will just write what is alienation, different types of alienation, examples of different types of alienation, that's it, done. Critically explain, mostly they don't care whether it is critically explained or not. We know salient features of alienation, we will write that, because criticism, it is difficult to write, right? All right. So here you can start with writing what is alienation. You can give the definition given by Karl Marx for alienation. Then in body, you have to briefly explain the features of alienation. Like you have to mention the cause of alienation. What are the causes of alienation? Division of labor, mechanization, capitalist mode of production. You have to write the different types of alienation. All of these need to be done in a brief way. Okay. Don't explain it. Because if you explain that, you will lose like around 1.5 pages just for explaining salient features, and you will not get any space for writing the criticism. And this is where the addressing issue happened. You expect yourselves to score good marks in this answer because in your mind, you have written this answer really well. But in actual UPSC evaluation, you won't be getting the marks that you have expected for this. This is the reason why some of the students will tell us or usually say that I have written the mains really well, but even then I am not getting good marks. Because whether we have addressed the question rightly or not cannot be understood at that particular moment. Because you are interpreting the question, you are addressing it, you are writing it, and you feel that the way you have interpreted and addressed the question is the right way. You will not be able to realize it, right? But you can realize if you have not written the name of thinkers. You can realize if you have not written the examples. You can realize if you have not connected various concepts. That is visible, you can understand that, and you will be aware of it whether you have done that or not. But in case of addressing, you will never be aware whether you have done it rightly or wrongly. You cannot say that it is muscle memory. I'll say that it is based purely out of experience. The number of questions you address, the number of questions you brainstorm, will or have a direct connection with the way you address the question. Because I can see that, or I'm saying that because I have seen examples of students who initially were not addressing the questions well, but once they started, practicing writing answers, brainstorming questions, etc., later stages, they were able to improve the way they address the questions. And that is visible in like 2 to 3 months. Because we usually have that kind of connection with students during the mains and, prelims to mains gap, right? So earlier answers will be, poorly addressed, but once they understand how to address, they understand the patterns, they put in the effort. By the end of the sectional test, most of the students addressing part usually gets better. Okay, so it's purely based on experience. That's it. Clear? All right. Now here, criticisms.
So, is it good to bring that reasons you said of EY employee in this answer?
You can mention that as an example. Recent issue of EY employee, that can be mentioned. No problem with that. So when you are explaining alienation, when you are explaining just suppose, see, here you have to mention the types of alienation, right? You have to mention about social alienation, self-alienation. So in case of self-alienation, you can quote the example of that employee. That's not an issue. And adding that example is actually good. You have to do that. Okay, wherever possible, if you can add some examples, do it. It's not like how faculties recommend for GS, where in GS you are supposed to write examples for every point that you write. But in sociology, that is not necessary. I'll say you have to bring examples in around like 40 to 50% of the points that you write. That's it. Okay. Too much examples are also not that good. Okay, like in GS, but definitely you have to bring examples. All right. And I'm really kind of, I usually, I'm hesitant to say this because when I say you have to add examples, everyone will add examples for every point. When I say that you don't have to add too many examples, then they will stop adding examples. Okay, there is nothing in between. Okay, either they will go over the board or they will not do it at all. Okay, so I usually become too careful when I say this. That's why I told you like 40 to 50% you can bring examples. Now, criticisms, we can mention Weber, rationality is the reason. It's not just because of capitalism or anything. Robert Blohner, technology, inverted U. Abraham and Morgan mentioned that there are other identities that people actually have, not just related to work. So, alienation will be less because there are multiple groups with which people are associated to. And in conclusion, you can mention that the change in nature of work in modern society has led to decrease in alienation. But however, technological changes like AI will further lead to increase in alienation, or there is concern of increasing alienation due to further increase in technology, especially related to AI. So here you are mentioning something which is futuristic in nature. This is another method of bringing, or writing conclusion. So here what we have done is, you have explained alienation, you have explained the criticisms, so you don't have to write the alternative path. Instead, what you can do is, you can write the current relevance as well as the futuristic aspect. The current relevance in the sense that, because of the change in nature of work, alienation has reduced in modern workplaces, but at the same time, the technological changes like AI further increase the risk or concerns of alienation. Right? Because when the most important thing everyone say about AI is, it will lead to job loss. When job loss happens, that can also lead to alienation. Clear? Then, what do you understand by mixed method? Discuss its strengths and limitations in social research. What is mixed method? Yeah, mixing quantitative and qualitative methods. That is mixed method. So, you can write what is mixed method. In body, you can write about the strength of mixed method. That is strength of mixing quantitative and qualitative data. What are the strengths of doing that? In-depth understanding of social phenomena, triangulation, complementarity, reliability, all those stuff can be written. And when it comes to limitations of mixed method, again, you have to write time and resource constraints are there. The researcher must be skillful in both quantitative as well as qualitative methods, which is quite rare. Okay. And there is also a problem with integrating qualitative data with quantitative data, because if you want to analyze the data, you have to integrate qualitative and quantitative, right? These are data of two different nature. Integrating these two are also very difficult. That must be done with better expertise, right? With high skill. And finally, you have to also mention that prioritizing, because researchers sometimes will prioritize one for the other. They will get confused in between, whether to give too much emphasis on quantitative and lesser emphasis on qualitative, or that kind of balance mostly is an issue when it comes to mixed method. Okay, clear? So these are all straightforward. There is no confusion in the way you have to address this. See, all of the questions that we have discussed until now, the thing is, these are the things that are being repeatedly being said and suggested by the faculties to students, right? If the question start with, do you think you have to write both the sides? If there is critically used in the directive, you have to write both the sides. The only problem is sometimes you guys mix up things. Okay, you guys will not give necessary attention to these details. That is where the addressing issue mostly happens. And this year, I feel like the questions were pretty much easier to address. And from my perspective, I will give more importance to it, because I have seen that the reason why students are scoring less in sociology is not because of the content. I am pretty sure about that. I'm pretty convinced about that, because I've come across students. I'm talking about those who are writing memes and those who have prepared well. There are students who might join for the test series but might not write the test, might not learn for the mains. I'm not talking about them, but all the serious students who are preparing well. Okay. The reason why some of them are not scoring well is not because of the content. It is just because of the way they address the answer. I'm pretty much convinced about that, because I've seen that variation in the marks. I've seen the performance of the students in the test series. I've compared that with the final marks that they've got, and I've seen the variation. And based on that variations, I've understood that it is not because of the content, but because of the addressing. I'll tell you one more important information. I'm pretty sure it's not directly related to this discussion, but it's very useful for you, I think, or I guess. See, basically, there are, cases where when it comes to students who write the answers in the mains exam, okay, they score good marks in the first attempt. Like they might have scored like 270, 280, 285, 290 range. Okay. The second attempt, their marks goes to 220, 230 levels, or even below that. I've seen that example. I've seen that example where one of our students scored like one of the best marks in all India level for paper 1 in 1 year. The very next year, he got like 80 something marks in paper 1. He scored like 150 plus in a particular year for paper 1. Okay, which was, I think, at that time when we checked, that was the highest for paper 1. The very next year or the year next to that, he scored like 88 or 85 for paper 1. Okay. Now, why is it happening? It has always been a contradictory thing for me. It was a paradoxical situation, right? People scoring high marks in the first attempt, scoring less in the second attempt. And as I've understood that this is a paradoxical situation, I've tried to compare their answers when they wrote it for the first time in their first attempt preparation for the test series, all the things that they've done here, and with the answers they write for their second or third attempt. Okay. What I've seen is, as and when the content increases, because in the first attempt, most of the students will have limited content because their preparation is just 1 year or 1.5 years old. So the level of content will also be limited. In the second year, however, they feel that I've scored like 270, 280. Now, if I increase the content, because they are also very much aware that they had limited content when they attempted sociology in the first attempt, right? So next year, automatically their thinking is, if I can improve my content, okay, from 280 I can score 300 plus, because with whatever limited content that I had, if I can score 280, if I improve the content, I'll score 300 plus. But the reverse happens. Why? Because when the content increases, complexity of answers also increases. The way they link the answer, the way they address the answer, because when we learn more content, this is something, I'm generalizing it, but what I've witnessed is actually true also, because when you learn more content, you will be in a kind of hurry or in a kind of a particular intention to add or dump, I'll say not add, but dump all those content into your paper to show that I've learned so many theories and concepts. In that process, you will never take care or will be concerned whether that particular concept is actually relevant for that question or not. Suppose a question from that area comes in, you try to dump that particular content without even trying to analyze or understand whether that content is directly related to the question asked. This increases the complexity, this reduces the comprehensibility of your answers. Right? You cannot comprehend your answer. It becomes more difficult, it becomes more complex. And the person who is evaluating the answer will feel that you are not that clear about that particular question or that particular concept. That is the kind of impression finally they give to the examiner, even after learning so many new concepts and theories. This is one reason that I feel, or that I found, that some of the students score less marks in their second or third attempt compared to their first attempt. Clear? So, focus. I'm not saying you should not focus on content. That's not what my point is. My point is, your focus should also be on the way you present and write that content. Okay. So, 4B, define the concept of gig economy and discuss its impact on labor market and workers' social security net. Okay. Here, the question is about discuss its impact, right? Impact can be positive as well as negative. So, when you are addressing, you have to also, when you read a question, you have to be aware of the words used in the question, other than that of the directive. Directive is like explain, examine, critically analyze. Now suppose you are asked to write a answer for the question like examine the role of science and technology in social change. Directive is examine, meaning you don't have to write the counter argument. But in this question, you have to write the counter argument. Why? Because you are asked to examine the role of science and technology. The role can be positive role as well as negative role. Are you getting the point? So if in question there are words like role, impact, consequence, you need to understand that these are neutral terms. The consequences can be positive as well as negative. Impact can be positive as well as negative. Role can be positive as well as negative. You need to understand that and then address the question. Is it clear? Are you getting the point? All right. So define the concept of gig economy and discuss its impact on labor market and worker social security net. So here you have to start with defining what is gig economy, right? And then in the body you have to write impact of gig economy on labor market as well as impact of gig economy on worker social security. In most of the cases, what students do is they will combine both of these and write the positive and negative impact. It is not wrong, but it is not the ideal way to address this question. Okay, it is not the ideal way, but it is not wrong as well. For 10 marker, you can combine it because you will not get enough space to separate the impact on labor market as well as to write the impact on social security. There you can combine it, but for 20 marker, try to separate the impact on labor market as well as impact on social security. And when you are writing the impact on labor market, you have to write the positive impact on labor market as well as negative impact on labor market. When you are writing the impact on social security, there again positive and negative. But for gig economy, we cannot come up with positive impact on social security, so we can just write the negative impact on social security. Is it clear? But ideally, if there is a positive side to it, you have to write that as well. Because this question is neutral, impact. They are not asking you to write just the negative points. And there are also cases where I see that students might have differentiated or separated it. Impact of gig economy on labor market and impact of gig economy on workers' social security. But the points that they write in the impact part will mostly be negative, because mostly we read about gig economy and its impact on labor from a negative point of view. So all their points will be negative. So they are completely ignoring the positive role of gig economy in labor market, and that will also lead to reduction in marks. So you have to, read the question properly, read every word of the question, and only then you have to interpret it and start writing the answer. In certain cases, students read half of the question and they will create their own assumption about the question and will start writing the answer. Okay, they won't bother to read the question entirely. They will not give emphasis and stress to each and every word. Instead, they'll just read it superficially and create an impression of the question and create an assumption of that question inside them. Okay, that is also not a good practice. All right, clear? So when it comes to body, gig economy and labor market, positive impact, you can mention about the flexibility aspect, redefining work relations, right? Employee-employer relation has changed because of it and from a positive note. Then easy entry as well as job creation have also increased because of gig, because as you know, the platform economy has led to increase in job opportunities. So that can be mentioned. Now negative impact, you can mention false class consciousness, because they mention about flexibility and I think we have discussed that in the last sociology current affairs session regarding the positive and negative impact of gig economy. Okay, I think that article was released before mains exam, but I don't know whether how many of them have actually read that article. I think from our Socio Connect article, there were like 2 questions. Directly, I think there were 2 questions. All right. Now, next is gig economy, impact of gig economy on social security. There you can mention the negative impacts like related to labor rights, inconsistent income, exploitative payment patterns, etc. All right, clear? So this is how you need to address that answer. And finally, when you're concluding, you can say that the issues of gig economy outweighs the benefits of gig economy. As a result, measures need to be taken. So you can give the suggestions. Here you can write it from a futuristic kind of a way forwardish kind of conclusion can be written here. You can mention that as an example. You can mention that government should take proactive steps to ensure that labor exploitation are controlled, because see, ultimately this is benefiting the capitalists, right? They can reduce their cost of an employee, maintaining an employee, but at the same time they are getting the services easily. So likewise you can mention. Then you have to also use terms like, in the last class we discussed the term guy standing, mentioned precariat class. So likewise you have to mention some concepts, terms, some factual information here and there. Okay, try to make your answers look more specific and more kind of technical in nature. Technical in the sense by using these keywords and key terminologies. Critically assess the impact of technological advancement and automation on nature of work and employment. Now here you have to write the positive impact and the negative impact of technological advancement and automation. See here, technological advancement, automation, you cannot separate it because it is an overlapping concept. Okay, so you have to also use your rationality, your logic there, because technological advancement and automation, if you start separating it, you will end up writing similar points in both the parts. So you have to understand that, like, if those two things are entirely different, you should consider separating it. If it is one and the same, it is overlapping, then you can address it as a single heading. Okay, so here you can write the impact. Now here you have to write both positive as well as negative, because impact is given as well as critically assess is also mentioned there. So you have to write positive, negative. So positive impact of technological advancement and automation. What is the positive impact? You can mention about redefining work and identity, interactionist perspective. See, I think regarding, did we discuss AI in the last current affairs session, artificial intelligence? No. See, in artificial intelligence, there is one article in SocioConnect where we have used these kind of perspectives there. Because from an interactionist perspective, work is something that provides identity to people, right? So when artificial intelligence and automation happen, all those repetitive nature or repetitive kind of work will be eliminated. So as a result, people can focus on tasks that require use of creativity, right? See, what is the reason for alienation according to Marx? It is because of degradation of work. What leads to degradation of work? Division of labor, specialization, repetitive nature of work, right? So if we can, take away that repetitive nature of work, and if we can automate that, then whatever work is left will be more creative, right? It will be more engaging for the worker. As a result, it can also reduce instances of alienation, right? It can also redefine the identities that we attach towards that of work, or the identity that we have of ourselves related to work. Because when we start engaging in better work, it can also change the perception regarding ourselves. Clear? So that is one point that you can mention from a symbolic interactionist viewpoint as well, from a Marxian point of view as well. Then better working conditions, because automation, robotics, etc. will lead to, engaging robots for hazardous work, right? For cleaning. See, basically you have to understand that with technological advancement, manual scavenging can be, we have eliminated manual scavenging with the use of technology. So likewise, better working conditions, better status work can be ensured through automation. So these are some of the important positive points that you can mention. And when it comes to that of the negative impact, you can use Harry Braverman's labor process theory. In labor process theory, Harry Braverman mentioned that all these kind of automation, technological advancement is giving more and more control to the capitalist, right? Automation gives more control. Whatever technological advancement, like new forms of monitoring the workers, new forms of assessing the work. Now, all of these are actually giving more power to the capitalist rather than the worker. So, from a Marxian point of view, you can bring that particular theory, labor process theory by Harry Braverman. Okay, then it reproduces biases. When the technology is used more, it will reproduce bias because existing gender, caste, class biases will be transferred to the system, and that will further, reinforce the structural inequalities. So likewise, you can mention the negative points as well. And in conclusion, you can mention that according to World Economic Forum's The Future of Jobs report, they mention that 85 million jobs will be lost because of artificial intelligence, but at the same time, it is expected to bring 95 million new jobs as well. Okay. So likewise, you can mention it and you can end the answer.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, I actually had a doubt on the point of increased job creation in terms of positive aspects of technological advancements. Could you explain that?
See, increase the job opportunities in the sense outsourcing will become possible, right? Geographical barriers are not, there anymore. So as a result, say for example, India, okay, now IT jobs is an example of technological advancement and removal of geographical barriers where more job opportunities are created in India. BPOs, it was made possible because of technological advancement. Otherwise, you have to be in that particular geographical location to provide that teleservices, right? Now, you need not have to be in that geographical location to provide these kind of services. So, that will lead to increase in job creation. You can also mention the gender aspect there as well in the positive side. Okay. Yeah, new jobs. They create new jobs, as well as geographical barriers are removed, they can also create new job opportunities in developing world. So you can mention all of those stuff. Clear? Okay. Then describe various characteristics of a social fact. How is rate of suicide a social fact according to Durkheim? Even though this question may seem simple, it is not as direct and as simple as it may seem. Okay. First part, I think it's very easy. You can define what is social fact. Then you can write the features of characteristics of social facts. What are the characteristics of social fact? Externality, constraint, independence, and generality. You can just briefly explain what these are. In the second part, how is rate of suicide a social fact according to Durkheim? How will you address this part? See, in order to address this part, one thing or the ideal thing to do is you have to say that the rate of suicide is a social fact by connecting it with the characteristics of social facts. How suicide rate is external to an individual. How suicide rates have constraints or is placing constraints on individual. How suicide is placing independence or is there that kind of independence is there. And how suicide rate is general. If you can explain that, only then you will be properly addressing that particular question. Is it clear? So, social fact, what is externality? It is outside an individual. It exists outside an individual. How can we connect suicide rate with externality? Because suicide rates are influenced by the factors which are external to an individual. According to Durkheim, your religion will influence the suicide rate. Protestants have higher suicide rate rather than Catholics. So it is not based on the individual level, but on the base of the collectivity which is external to the individual. The social group you belong to will determine your suicide rate. So as a result, it is external to an individual. Clear? Second is, it is placing constraints on the individual. How? Integration and regulation. Right? Society's integration levels and regulation levels will have a coercive power on the individual, because if you are part of a society where the regulation is very high, then there is higher tendency for you to commit suicide because of higher regulation in that society. So that means it have a coercive power on the individual, right? Higher integration as well as lower integration, higher regulation as well as lower regulation. So by connecting integration and regulation Durkheim is mentioning about the coercive power of the suicide on an individual. Clear? Now, third, regarding independence. How can we connect independence with that? What is independence? Independence means social facts are not dependent on the individual characteristics. Right? That is what independence means when it comes to social facts. Social facts are not based on or not dependent on the individual characteristics. Instead, it is present at the collectivity level. Now, how can we connect that with suicide? See, the underlying social structure will influence the suicide rate. Right? It is independent of an individual because the underlying social structure, in the sense, again, you can mention according to Durkheim, your religion. Yeah, see, that is external to you, but at the same time, the individual characteristics are not directly leading to suicide. Instead, the society and the social character is leading to suicide. Are you getting the point? It is independent because of that fact. See, when it comes to externality, we have mentioned that suicide rate is existing outside an individual because it is not an individual phenomenon, but according to Durkheim, it is a social phenomenon. Right? In independence, we are saying that individual characters does not lead to suicide rate. Instead, the social character will determine the suicide rate of individuals in that society. Are you getting the difference? So, independence means the social character or the society's character will determine the suicide rate rather than the individual characteristics. Clear? Are you getting the point? And finally, when it comes to that of generality, what you need to understand here, according to Durkheim, suicide follows general patterns across different societies, making it a collective phenomena. Because it is general in the sense, when you look into various groups, you can see that the suicide rates are generalized. Right? Catholics, lower suicide. When it comes to that of Protestants, higher suicide. Clear? See, independence, you can also quote the example or you can explain that when it comes to that of the suicide rate. Even though the individual character remains the same, okay, or individual character varies, you can take that example. Even when the individual character varies, a society's suicide rate will remain as such for a longer period of time. Right? Because according to Durkheim, a society will have a particular suicide rate which may, exist like that for a longer period of time. And then what happens? Suicidogenic currents may appear in the society that will lead to increase in suicide rate. Right? So, individual's character throughout this period will be the same. Right? But when the suicidogenic current appears in the society, that will lead to increase in suicide rates even among the individuals. So, that can also explain independence. Generality means there are general patterns in suicide, meaning that the suicide rate are influencing all the members of a particular society. Is it clear? Okay. Just give me a second. All right. Now, so here conclusion, as we have thoroughly discussed about what is social fact, we have connected that with the suicide rate. You can write limitations of social fact or you can also write limitations of suicide to just provide the alternative viewpoint or the counter viewpoint. Is it clear? Both are fine. Okay. Any other doubt, anyone? Okay. Now, next is explain Mead's idea of development of self through the generalized other. Okay. What is self and what is generalized other? I and me is the part of self. There are two parts of self. Self is the ability to consider oneself as a subject as well as an object. That is self, right? What is generalized other? Society. Yeah. Generalized other means society. It is the, collective social values and norms and everything. That is actually generalized other. It is society. So you have to explain what is self as well as what is generalized other in the first part. And when it comes to that of the body, you have to explain the development of self. The 3 stages in development of self. What are those 3 stages? Imitation stage. Then you have to mention about the play stage. You have to mention about the game stage. Briefly explain these 3 stages. And when you are explaining the game stage, you have to mention that here in the game stage, an individual's view is influenced by the perspective of generalized other. That is where the influence of generalized other actually comes in. Clear? And then in the second part, you have to elaborate on that part. That is how the role of generalized other is influencing the development of self. So there you have to mention that for an individual's self, there are 2 parts, which is I part and me part. When it comes to me part, it is nothing but the reflection of the generalized other. And when it comes to I part, it is the response of the individual to that of the attitude of generalized other. So that connection should be established properly there. Clear? And then you can conclude. And when you are concluding, what you can do is you can mention limitations possible on, right? You can say that when it comes to this theory, they are not, properly addressing the role of social structure, right, in creating social change or in determining the self and all those stuff. Or you can say that there is an ongoing conversation between the I part and me part of the individual, and it is through this constant conversation that even the social dynamism also happens. Okay. Likewise, also you can conclude there. So you can mention the dynamic aspect where regarding that of the constant constant interaction between the I part and me part, which ultimately leads to changes in society. Or you can also mention some of the limitations of the study. Okay, both are fine. Clear? Then describe the differing principles of work organization in feudal and capital societies. What is the differing principles of work? Very simple, right? Here, when you are starting, when you are introducing the answer, you have to mention the definition of social organization of work. Then you can briefly write about the feudal social organization of work as well as capitalist social organization of work, briefly. So first paragraph will be definition of what is social organization of work. Second paragraph will be feudal social organization, and third paragraph will be capitalist social organization of work. Is it clear? And then you can give the heading differences between the social organization of work in feudal society and capitalist society. Draw a table. Most of the students will write this as 2 separate paragraphs. In the first paragraph, they will explain the feudal organization of work. In the second paragraph, they will explain the capitalist organization of work. There will not be any differences there. Just these 2 explanations. See, if you are asked to write the differences, you have to compare it. There are 2 ways you can do that. One is you can draw a table, take one particular dimension and write down the differences in feudal and capital organization of work. Or the second way to do that is, instead of drawing the table, you can give each dimension as the heading, and in the paragraph you can write how feudal as well as capitalist organization of work is different based on that particular dimension. Suppose you are trying to mention about innovation. So your heading will be innovation. You are writing in paragraphs. Okay. Innovation will be your heading. And you can write that in capitalist organization of work, there is higher stress for innovation. On the other hand, when it comes to that of the feudal system, lower stress is placed or laid on innovation. So likewise, you can mention each and every dimension and you can explain it. Or you can draw a table and do it. Both are fine. I'll suggest you to draw a table and write the differences. Because from a presentation point of view, that will look better, and when it comes to visibility of the points also, that will be better. Clear? And when you are concluding, you can write that what are actually leading to the changes. See, when it comes to social organization of work, there is technical aspect as well as the normative aspect. Normative aspects leads to the normative structure of society, the norms, values of society, and the technical aspect leads to means the division of labor, the technological improvements, etc. So you can mention that the changes in the normative and the technical aspects of feudal society and capitalist society has led to changes in the organization of work. Likewise, you can mention. Okay, you can mention the reason why there is difference. Clear? How is power different from authority? Discuss various types of authorities as theorized by Max Weber. What is power? According to Weber, it is the ability of an individual or group of individuals to realize their will in communal action, even against the resistance of others. This is the definition given by Weber. And when you are asked to write about power, try to give the definition of Weber. Okay, try to give a proper definition. That's it. Then, what is authority? How is power and authority different? Yeah, power is exercised in two ways. One is coercion, second is legitimate form of power. Coercion means you are using your force to get that kind of power, and legitimate use of power means the people who are subjected to power accept the power exercised by that particular individual or group of individuals. So if the people who are subjected to power accept the authority or accept the power exercised by the individuals, then that is the legitimate use of power, which is referred to as authority. So authority is nothing but legitimate use of power. Clear? So you have to explain that angle. What is power? How power can be exercised? What is coercion? What is legitimate use of power, etc. And in body, simple. You have to write 3 types of authority. What are the 3 types of authority? Traditional, charismatic, and rational legal authority. You have to give examples for each type of authority. And in conclusion, you can say that Weber has created an ideal typical classification of authority, but in reality, these authorities can be mix of these types. So you can mention that, because when it comes to Weber's ideal types, you can use that as, for wherever Weber has used ideal types, whether it is authority, whether it is social action, Weber have mentioned that these are just ideal typical classification. In reality, the actual exercise will be mix of these aspects. Clear? So that can be mentioned in conclusion. And 5E, we will be discussing this question, and for today we will wind up here. I don't think you guys will be able to take more of it, and we will continue with this discussion in the next session. I'll be updating regarding the next session in the group. It will be in this week itself. It will be mostly in the coming weekdays itself. Okay, so I'll be updating that in the channel. Okay. So 5E, critically examine the roles of science and technology in social change. What is your opinion on the increasing trend in online education and teaching? Now, this is a tricky question because this question is for 10 marks and you are supposed to write multiple aspects, right? Critically examine the role of science and technology in social change, meaning you have to write positive as well as negative. What is your opinion on their increasing trend in online education? You have to write positive, negative. For a 10-marker question, to divide question into 4 different parts is very difficult because you will not get space. So in that case, if UPSC asks question in this way, what I suggest you to do is, you can just divide this answer into 2 parts. Because dividing it into 4 will be very difficult, and in each part you will get a chance to write only like 1 or 2 points, 2 points max. Because if you write more than 3 points or 2 points, you will end up missing any of these parts. Okay, so better idea, divide it into 2. One is the role of science and technology in social change, and when you are writing the points, you write both positive as well as negative points. Instead of giving separate headings, initially you can write the positive, and the second part you can, second half you can write the negative points. So heading will be single heading, that is role of science and technology in social change, but the points that you write will be both positive as well as negative. So either you can write the negatives at the first part and the positives in the later half. That order doesn't matter, it's totally up to you. Okay. And then we are going to write the second part, increasing trend in online education. So science and technology and online education and training. There again you have to write the positive as well as the negative part, right? So when it comes to role of science and technology in social change, here you can use the frameworks. See, there were various questions where we could use frameworks, but this is one typical question where frameworks can give you lots of points. See, role of science and technology in social change, education, political, economic, gender, family, religion, right? You can go and on and on and on, and you can bring all different dimensions, but you will not get enough space. So you have to prioritize, write few of the important points that you first get. Like say you can write about science and technology, economic angle is important. Then you can write about the gender aspect, because how technology is bringing changes, as well as you can also bring about or mention about the interactions, because when it comes to social media or technology, social media is part of that. Interactions are changing, the way people interact with each other are changing, so that can also be mentioned, or that must be mentioned. Clear? All right. Then in the second part, when it comes to that of science and technology in online education, positive aspects, you can mention that geographical barriers are not there, right? Inclusivity, you can mention all of those stuff. Continuous education, right? Opportunities for skilling at any point of life, right? But negative aspect, digital divide, right? Then what else? Negative aspects of online education. Gender divide. You can mention about gender divide. You can mention about digital divide. Then exposure and values of education. That can also be mentioned, because it is through education that secondary socialization happen. It is when the children. So there you can mention about Durkheim also. Durkheim also considers education as a preparatory stage for individuals to actually live in the wider society. So that can also be mentioned there. So wherever possible, whatever you have learned and whatever concept that you can use, be aware of it. And see, these things will not come to you naturally. That is for sure. You will not have the inherent ability to do that on your own. Now, I'm not saying that you, you know, see, it's not in that sense, but I'm not saying that you guys are not capable, but definitely you guys are capable. But these things will not, in 99.9% of the cases, will not come to someone quite naturally. Okay. All those people who do it are doing it because they have practiced it really well. So what you need to do is, when you look into the nature of the questions, it is very evident that you will have to do that interconnection, right? You have to bring concepts from other parts. You have to add points from there to here. So you have to take questions. You have to do that brainstorming. Even if you don't write the answers, you have to do that brainstorming. Like, if I am addressing this particular part of the question, what all points can I bring? In those points, what all viewpoints of thinkers can be integrated into it? What all examples can be integrated there? So you have to have that kind of a worksheet, like workbook kind of thing there, where you do these kind of stuff. You do the brainstorming, you try to connect the topics, you connect the concepts, you connect the thinkers, examples, etc. So once you start doing it regularly, and I believe that the changes can be seen from like around 2 months and all, you will become much more comfortable in writing answers as well, in addressing questions, in writing answers, in overall preparation. It will be really beneficial for you. You will not get scared of dynamic questions, because we definitely get scared, right? Because for answering the questions that we have prepared from a particular note or from a material, it is easy for us. There is some level of certainty, and we will not get stressed or we will not panic inside the examination hall. But the moment you start getting the questions that you haven't prepared but can be written based on the knowledge that you have acquired, you will get unsettled. You will, to a point, get, kind of, you will start panicking. Okay. And that is where all of a sudden your brain will stop working. You will not be able to recollect points. You will not be able to bring the points. To avoid that, do this brainstorming exercise. It will be very much beneficial for you. Okay. So on that note, I am winding this session for now. I'll let you know when we will be conducting the remaining part of this particular discussion, and we will be posting the answer key in the group. All right. So thank you so much.